A mom accused of shooting her own sons inside of her Kentucky home could be offered a plea deal. We're going to break down these latest details in the Tiffanie Lucas case. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We have been closely following the case of Tiffanie Lucas as it makes its way through the court system in Kentucky. And now we have learned that a plea deal could possibly be on the table in this absolutely horrific case. The 32-year-old woman, Miss Lucas, is accused of shooting her two sons, 6-year-old Maurice Baker Junior and 9-year-old Jayden Howard, to death inside of their Bullitt County home out in Kentucky this last November. And you know what makes this just so incredibly eerie and chilling is that just days before this, Lucas had seemingly posted photos of herself and the half-brothers in Star Wars costumes for Halloween, smiling, none the wiser. But on the day in question, first responders found Lucas outside in the driveway. That's the allegation. The two boys were found in a bedroom, both shot in the head. They were rushed to a children's hospital. They both died. Lucas allegedly told police that the shooting was an accident, that she said someone had given her a gun, but said she would never have done something like this unless someone, quote, manipulated her, and that she was in, quote, such a bad spot. Detectives said Lucas made statements that she was being manipulated through Facebook, through the internet, or through Wi-Fi. Lucas was arrested. She was charged with murder. She's been in jail ever since on a $2 million bond. In fact, when this first happened and we were piecing together the shooting and we didn't have all the details, I had the opportunity to interview from the Bullitt County Sheriff's Office Chief Deputy Colonel Alex Payne. And I always go back to this and I'm always reminded about this because listen to what he had to say.
There were statements evidently that were made there on scene. As to our recollection right now, the individual that is responsible basically went next door to a neighbor's house and was eventually, there was a husband and a wife there. And she was actually in their driveway, laying down in their driveway when they came across her. And, the husband ended up going inside the house, locating the boys, and immediately coming out and calling 911. And that's when the police and EMS response occurred. I can tell you that the boys were shot in an area that would not be survivable for anybody. However, they were alive, to the best of our knowledge, when they were transported by EMS to the hospital and passed away while at the hospital. As far as our responsibility, and you know this, from law enforcement, we're responsible actually for the criminal investigation itself, and then being the best witnesses that we can possibly be for the information that we put forward to the prosecutor. So, motive sometimes can be a byproduct, but I can tell you now, in my 40 plus years of being in this line of work, there are three things that I've seen, and it can be these things individually, or it can be these things in combination. You can have a individual who is suffering from some type of mental illness. You can have an individual who has some type of substance abuse problem, or that individual can simply be just that evil, or it can be a combination of those things. I haven't seen any other outliers other than those three. And so right now, I guess it's, anybody's guess as to which one of those she covers. And right now we're trying to gather everything that we possibly can, that we have knowledge of, to put together as part of our investigation to present to the Commonwealth.
Hey everybody, so this episode of Sidebar is sponsored by Truthfinder, and it makes sense since we cover a lot of stories like the one we're covering now, where we ask ourselves, how well do we really know the people in our lives? Well, Truthfinder is a service that can maybe provide some answers because it's one of the largest public records search services in the United States. You go on the website truthfinder.com and you type in a name, and within minutes and a paid subscription purchase, you can access unlimited reports that could include information like phone numbers, location history, criminal and traffic records, including possible arrests and criminal convictions. Also, if you type in an address within the report, it shows you registered sex offenders in that area, which honestly is just kind of wild to see. So whether it's researching new dates or friends or reconnecting with people, Truthfinder is a great tool. And right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports at truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. But now let's talk about the latest update. So 2 weeks ago, Lucas was back in court for a quick hearing, and we learned that there could be a plea deal on the table. Now, to be clear, there's nothing official yet, but during a hearing on Monday, a motion for mediation was filed, and that means that the prosecution and the defense will come together, usually to try to hammer out a deal. It's voluntary, by the way. And the prosecutor told local media outlets that this will give each side the chance to see where this case stands and decide if this is a case that can be put to bed now or if a trial is necessary. Commonwealth's attorney Bailey Taylor said, if all parties are not on board or we reach a roadblock that we can't get past, it's not a binding mediation. We can call it quits at any time. And remember, Taylor previously said that Lucas was, quote, looking at, of course, as a capital offense, possibly the death penalty, but we have not notified the defense that we were seeking the death penalty at this time. However, news of this possible deal did not make some family members very happy. To give you an idea of this, let's go back to December when we spoke here on Sidebar with Michelle Rice. This is 6-year-old Maurice's stepmother, and we asked her about the family's loss and what they would like to see happen in this case.
They were the sweetest little boys. They were so polite. They were happy. They did both love playing the video games and stuff like that. Little Reese, we called him Little Reese. He loved playing soccer and loved playing outside and riding his bike and stuff like that. They were great little boys. Like, I don't understand how someone, like, just even knowing them could do something like that. A lot of people see the social media side of her, and that's just the social media side. It's not really how she was, off the camera, versus how, like, a personal relationship you would see her really act or see the crazy side of her. They were taken away. She tested positive for drugs. And she got them back. I guess there's ways, to work the system, of course. And she worked the system and she got them back. And then there was no follow-up, which I don't understand either. Because if they would have, then I'm sure they would have found something. Their living conditions inside the house were crazy. I never would have thought that it looked like that, honestly. But it looked horrible. It looked really bad. We want the death penalty. That's what we want. She deserves to die, like, definitely.
And some of those family members have been in court every time Lucas has appeared before the judge, and they told local media outlets after Monday's hearing that they're very unhappy that a deal could be on the table. It's been reported that they confronted attorney Bailey Taylor outside of the courtroom, saying they want her sentenced to death or life without the possibility of parole. Maurice Baker Junior's aunt, Bobby Brown, reportedly told Taylor, if you don't want to try it, let somebody else do it, Bailey, for real, because she deserves everything she gets. Back to Michelle Rice, she reportedly said, mediation isn't really an option on our side from his family. We don't want mediation. We want her to get exactly what she deserves, and we would rather the death penalty and life without parole. Now let's analyze this for a moment. So a mediation date has not been set as of yet, but that could take several months. And you might be saying, why would prosecutors agree to a deal here? Well, as we've seen in cases all across this country, not only are trials time-consuming, expensive, especially, by the way, death penalty cases, because there are two phases of that trial. There's the guilt phase, and then there's the penalty phase if the defendant is found guilty. But I would say in a case like this, and other cases generally, one of the most important considerations in determining whether or not you offer a deal to an accused murderer, an accused child murderer, is there is an incredibly emotionally taxing element to that these trials are very, very difficult. We are talking about the deaths of two little innocent boys. The idea would be, if we can save a jury and the boys' family members from having to hear about how these boys were shot, the autopsy photos, the medical examiner testifying, if we can spare everyone the pain of that, then that is a major factor in trying to not have a trial. Now, this doesn't appear to be, on its face, at least to me, to be a case where there's a lack of evidence, right? Where prosecutors want to work out a deal because they maybe can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Lucas did this. No, the evidence at this point appears to be quite strong. Which brings us to the question, what would a deal actually look like? Well, would it be you agree to plead guilty, and in exchange you get life in prison and the death penalty is taken off the table? That is certainly a possibility, although you could also say, why don't we just try her and take the death penalty off the table? Would it be life in prison with the possibility of parole, a move that would be highly controversial given the circumstances of this case? And can you imagine the backlash from the family? And you also have to ask, would the prosecution sign off on a deal that the family didn't want? Yes, the family doesn't have the final say. This is between the government and the defendant. But the family's considerations, especially in a case like this, you have to imagine, should be taken into account. So we will see how this maps out. But this is just another development in what is a truly awful case. That's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.